Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever time you see this video. Today we have a special guest with Mr. Cesar del Aguila from city of Herndon, Virginia. He's currently a city council member and is also running for the city council member position this November. So welcome to the show, Mr. Cesar del Aguila. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I enjoy meeting new people and always the opportunity to do some outreach. So thank you for the time.
No issues. Thank you. You're welcome. We would like to know more about yourself. I mean, how did you start your career, and what did you do for your living as a profession? And then, how did you got attracted to the politics, and then got into the city council of Herndon, Virginia?
Sure. First of all, you should know something about me. I'm a first generation American here. My parents came here from Peru in 1960. Um, Again, typical American story. They did not speak the language, and today you would consider them undocumented. They overstayed their visa, but they got jobs. They met people that helped them. Certainly, we had assistance from the community at the time, whether it was public assistance, meals, food stamps, public schools. The community basically helped my family. So being a product of that, growing up in an environment that was very diverse, I like to think that growing up, being exposed to many, many cultures, many different languages, foods, and just that to me is what I remember growing up. So I think for me, I have a different perspective on what inclusion is. It's really about everything and everyone. I think that is what we learned. I've learned several languages over my life. I've eaten more diverse foods than I think most people care to try. But for me, that was the background. And certainly having been successful in that environment, I feel I have an obligation to provide opportunity for others that need that. So certainly want to preserve and integrate into our culture, being the United States, assimilate. But I think every culture has a very unique and beautiful history that enriches our country overall. And I say that because I've been fortunate and blessed. I'm in the information technology field. I am an account executive with a cloud-based company. So I've been able to stay on the technology transition and keep that success going. So I think that's part of what I like to consider paying back to my community, my county, my country, and certainly that's what we grew up with. I'm also, as you said, I serve on the Herndon Town Council currently. I volunteer with the Fairfax County Sheriff's Department as a reserve deputy sheriff. I've been on several boards and commissions giving back to the community in my time. So I think it truly is about, what we can give back to our neighbors, our community. There's always going to be people that resist that, but you kind of have to work around that and do what's right. So in terms of what got me into politics, I think 10 years ago I ran and I lost by a few votes. And I think there was a lot of anti or fear of the Latino community back then. I think I can say that's died down in our area. I don't feel that people are afraid of Latinos today. I got the sense that Latinos were vilified back then, and I think that I wanted to help people understand that, we're a very diverse culture. We have many language variations within the Latino culture. We have different beliefs, and to paint brought us, with one monolithic view was just not not the truth. So I think over the years, and again, I'm speaking specifically in Herndon, that sentiment has died down. You'll always find people that fear change. You'll always find people that have been here a long time that I think remember when they knew all their neighbors and everyone spoke the same language. Everyone ate the same foods. Everyone looked the same. I can certainly empathize with that. I understand it, but I try to teach everyone that everyone's culture is beautiful, and if they just open themselves up to experiencing it and trying it, they'll find that it's not only not scary, it's actually very rewarding. So I think that's where I think Herndon, I would like to think is. We certainly have our issues. I think there are always going to be some issues where the strength is the diversity of our culture, but it's also a source of tension. And I think understanding that and acknowledging that, I think does us more good than trying to be right, to convince people that you are wrong and I am right. I like to think first try to understand and then try to be understood. So that's how I think I've tried to approach being a council member. I will say we need to do a better job in having more true representative government. There's very little diversity at certainly among the council. I believe this year we elected the first Latino and the first council member, Pradeep Dakal, very good friend of mine, Nepalese. So the council is certainly trending to be truly representative. The town is over 50% immigrant minority community, yet at the top levels, we don't have that representation on council. We don't have that representation in the key leadership positions of the town. We don't have diversity representation on boards or commissions. So that's a challenge for us in those roles. But the rub is we're pointing out to people that have been on these boards and commissions and council that there has not been a initiative, or it has not been valued to bring diversity to these positions. And I call on you and your audience and members to get involved in local government. Somewhere out there, there is someone that can represent their community better than I can, because you need that perspective, that mindset, that worldview to get the desired outcome that you need for your community and make it part of this community, right? We all assimilate. That's what the American dream is. We come, it's a melting pot, and it's better for it. I think the proud thing, I love the Olympics, because every time you see the Olympic teams of other countries, they look like people from those countries. But if you look at the American Olympic team, you don't know where they're from. They're from everywhere. And that to me is what I remember growing up. It was just different people from different worlds all living together. So let me stop there and answer some questions. And thank you for letting me speak.
No problem at all. Thank you. What a coincidence. I mean, you are in the IT field and you've been in the first generation immigrant, and you're able to get to this level in the Herndon area, which is very impressive, and happy to hear that. And coincidentally, another thing I want to share is, I just, when I was searching about your information, I saw some Peru articles coming up, but I mean, you confirmed that your origins are from Peru. Coincidentally, we were in Peru last December, just before the pandemic hit all over the world. So we were lucky to have our last vacation, before this whole shutdown happened. So it is a beautiful country. We were able to go to Machu Picchu, Lima, Cusco, and Sacred Valley, and the Lake Titicaca. They're the places we visited. It's a beautiful country and nice people.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Which part of Peru are your family from?
So my mom's is from the Piura. It's more northern coastal. My dad's from Lima. His family's there. But I do also have a strong lineage to Spain. So I
Okay.
did the whole ancestry. So and mostly Native American. So I'm a mixture of all these cultures, and so I'm not one. I'm many different cultures. So
Right. Very nice. That's okay. I mean, just we want to know. That's good to know about your background and where you're from and your origin and what you do and your volunteer work in different departments before coming to the elections, which is nice. So, can you talk about? I mean, your first term in the city council. I mean, what have you? I mean, what is your experience and what did you see and what kind of changes you were able to bring in?
sure, sure. And one thing you should know that so within the Commonwealth of Virginia, there are distinctions. Uh, the city of Richmond is different from the town of Herndon. And it's different in terms of the incorporation, the charters, their abilities, and the authorities. So Herndon being a town, we have a charter. There are certain things that we're limited to. For example, we don't manage the schools. That's
Oh,
Fairfax County.
hmm.
We don't have a housing authority.
Hmm.
That's Fairfax County. So there are things that are different in the town that we can legally impact versus being a city. So one of the things that we deal with is budget, land use, and zoning. So in terms of where we can make an impact, uh, budget. Coming into your first year, and this is, I think, true of any of these people that serve on 2-year terms, whether it be Congress and even a 4-year term, a governor, that first year budget is pretty much already set before you get into office. So you really don't have a lot of impact capability on that first year budget. So your real only impact is in your second year. And the problem is you're running for office. so the timing makes it very difficult to get people focused on long-term initiatives. And I've always said this, although we're only elected for 2 years, we should be concerned and planning for the next 2 decades. And I'm not talking about just talking about it, but actually prioritizing line items in the budget. But people are adverse to that because, well, I may not be here in the next session, or I don't care about, 5 years or 10 years. I don't want to commit our budget dollars this year to that. So people have gone around and said, hey, I didn't raise your taxes, expecting like that's a victory or that's a success. To me, that's an insult, because when you as an elected official tell me you haven't raised my taxes, you're telling me you didn't think enough about my community to invest long term. In Herndon, our budget shortfalls are we don't have the monies to make sidewalks compatible with the American Disability Act, meaning that if you're in a wheelchair, if you're a mom or dad pushing a baby stroller, or if you need a walker, on the sidewalk, in the middle of the sidewalk, there's a telephone pole. The only way to get around that is to get into the street. And as you have more congestion, more and more people, that's dangerous. So the solution is to either allocate money for those capital improvements or cut services. But it's not to do nothing. So the budget's a big fight. And it's a big challenge this year because the whole coronavirus situation has caused us to completely rethink the budget. We don't have as much business revenue. We don't have as much transient occupancy tax coming in. And certainly this is not the year to increase taxes or raise revenues, because quite frankly, the economy is still not stable. But this is what I mean. Over the last 10 years, we've had what is arguably prosperity over a decade. Yet councils previous to this one did nothing to raise revenues. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. In a time of economic growth, when the economy was growing, we did nothing to stabilize. Their value of success was, I didn't raise your taxes. Last 12 to 18 months. But in order to not raise taxes, we didn't contribute to those general funds. We didn't contribute to the operating expenses. So it's going to be a challenge. So we're going to have some continued budget discussion. We passed the budget, but depending on what these next couple months look like, we may or may not release some of the monies we kept back in reserve. So it's going to be quite a challenge. But look, we're asking for comments from the residents. We're asking for comments from anyone that lives in towns. And we can't just cut our way out of this, right? We still have to pick up trash, right? We still have to maintain the town. So there are people that want us to eliminate the town completely. So look, I think it's going to be difficult. I think we're going to have to make some hard choices and find where we can cut services, but we're going to have to find revenue somewhere. And I don't know where that is completely, but there's going to be some tough choices here for the budget coming into this pandemic.
Gotcha. And that's I mean, you have covered wide topics. I mean, a wide range of topics here. So we will go a few of them in few minutes. Before we get into that one, I mean, why don't please tell us something about the pandemic situation in your city currently in Herndon, and also overall in Virginia. How is the government? How the governments are handling it, and what are your views on them?
Yeah, I think we're pretty progressive in that sense that the Governor Northam has issued a stage 3. We're certainly encouraging everyone to maintain a social distance. Certainly, where I walk, people are wearing masks. Herndon, the town, is basically the bike path, the Washington Old Dominion bike path cuts right through. I see a lot of people on the bike path. They don't wear face masks. A lot of people running, jogging, biking, walking the dogs, push strollers. No one has the face mask. But when they go into the stores, I do see that. We could do a little bit more with outdoor zones for dining. In fact, the town was very quick to respond for local businesses, restaurants that wanted to and needed to implement outdoor seating. I think if you come to Herndon, that's the first thing you'll notice. We didn't have outdoor dining prior to Corona. I think it's, again, there are blessings in everything. There is so much outdoor dining. And again, it's socially distanced. People are being responsible. It's added a very vibrant feel to the town. I hope we can somehow incorporate that into our zoning when we go through this. And I think for the most part, the big hit is just in businesses. We're going to lose businesses. I think we're going to lose, residents. It's not going to be good. But again, coming from the business side, I like to certainly plan for the very worst and certainly hope for the best. But my thinking is our expectation did not go far enough. I think the budget will be worse than what we're initially predicting.
Gotcha. So, I mean, yeah, you mentioned that, I mean, the pandemic has a very severe effect on the impact on this community. I'm sure every city has been going through similar situations, and states are facing it, and whole country and large corporations are also facing the impact of this particular disease and the pandemic. But in particular, with the cities, I mean, they do run on the revenue, and already you mentioned earlier in your talks that, I mean, your city is struggling with the budgets right now. So on top of it, I mean, this pandemic is also forcing you to collect less revenue. Let it be some people are not able to pay the water bills. I'm not sure about the demographics of your area. And there is no, I mean, if you have somebody's not able to maintain their property well, you cannot go and give a citation because during this time, I mean, it is not reasonable or makes sense. I mean, it may not look good, I mean, to give a citation at this point of time. I mean, it's a moral kind of thing. And at the same time, not much of traffic, so no more not many traffic tickets. So you're not getting many revenue. So how are you coping up? How is the city coping up with less revenue? So I mean, can you share any few points on in those areas, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been lucky in that we've had town leadership, town management, town staff running pretty efficiently. If you look at some of the things we've done, this was prior to me being on council. I will give credit to prior councils. It was a pretty streamlined staff. Technology was implemented where it could for productivity enhancements. I think the challenge is keeping those people in place to perform and deliver those services. The challenge is going to be, how do we maintain the right level of talent, those resources doing what they're doing? Because remember, we sit within Fairfax County and Loudoun County, proximity to Loudoun, certainly Prince William. Those are all areas that need talent, that need resources, that need skilled staff. So our challenge is we may not be able to pay people enough, even though we want to keep them. There are opportunities out there, especially in the DC area. There are lots of businesses that trickle from the government spending. That's one key thing about the DC metropolitan area. There's a lot of government spending, a lot of service providers, systems integrators, employers. There are lots of jobs for a lot of people. The challenge we're going to have is how do we maintain the services with the people we have? How do we do more with less people, should that happen? And then how do we pay for all that? Again, I go back to, we didn't plan enough in terms of a downturn. If I only have 2 months in reserve for my operating expenses, what happens after those 2 months? This goes back to long-term planning. One of the lessons learned out of this is, regardless of how painful it is, we have to do better long-term planning. I would like to see that operating expense in the general fund be 12 months. 12 months or maybe 24 months, because you never know when the downturn is going to hit, and you have to maintain the budget at that level. And hoping is not a strategy. You just can't hope your way through this. So I would like to see us, and not just this council, but future councils, taking ownership of the stability long-term for the town, the community, and the services that we're providing. It doesn't help us to constantly tout a victory of not raising revenues, not raising taxes. That to me is the wrong way to look at this. You have to look long-term, even though you're only on for 2 years. We need to be committed to the long-term stability of the town. And we're going to have that discussion here soon. I think the majority of the council members need to understand that 2 months planning is not enough. There's no long-term stability in planning for 2 months. To me, that's not the right job.
Good. Thank you. I mean, I was disconnected for a few minutes and a few seconds, and I came back. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, many cities. I mean, I was talking to many other mayors and numbers. I mean, these are the challenges they have been facing it. So, but yeah, as you said rightly in the beginning, I mean, the suburbs of the DC is one way they are very lucky. They have both government jobs and also the private jobs. So that is helping the economy during multiple recessions, like maybe 2001 or 2008 or even now. I mean, it looks like, I mean, that's where the real estate price also never dipped during any of this, not much. So that way, the economy is vibrant in that area, which is very nice and very good for that area. So coming back to the city and the politics, I heard, I mean, your current mayor is not running for the next elections. So what are your views, and why is she not running for the elections again? Any say on those things?
Yeah, honestly, 10 years ago, I supported the mayor and other folks because I believed that they would certainly prioritize some of the values that I certainly supported. I've been disappointed, which is why I ran the last time. There are things that just have not. I think, again, the lack of diversity in leadership positions, the lack of diversity in boards and commissions. You cannot have a government entity that does not represent the people it serves. And you just can't talk about wanting to be diverse, not wanting, you have to do it. And if you're not doing it, it tells me you don't value that item and initiative. So for me, there were several things why, and look, I think it's good that you change leadership. Transformation is a good thing, and transformation in leadership is the start of that transformation. So thank you to her for what she's done, but we need different leadership now to take us forward. Herndon is, as I said before, it's a majority minority immigrant community. So I personally have made a commitment to do outreach to all the communities. I don't want to talk to the same person that shows up to every meeting over and over and over again. That doesn't represent the rest of the town. I want to hear from people that don't come to meetings that want to help their community. I want to talk to the people that have a different vision than I have. I don't treat the contrarian view as a bad thing. It's an opportunity to learn and to understand. So I think you will see a town council in 2020 that is a majority minority immigrant representation. I think for the first time in the history of the town, you will have true representation of the town. Now, we're not going to agree on everything, but that's okay. That does not make us enemies. And I think for too long, there's been the leadership, the mindset that if you don't agree with me, you are my enemy. That's not the way to run a town, none less a business. So I think the change in leadership is going to be good. I think the transition to a majority immigrant community council is going to be great. I think we're going to have some great discussions, debates of ideas, but I think that's where you get the better ideas. You and I may not agree on a solution, but if you or I can convince or enlighten us to a different worldview or approach, I think we're better off with the product that we end up with. And that for me is what I want to do. I want to bring transparency. Right now, there weren't, prior to this year, recordings of our work sessions. You think about that for a minute. In the town, there was no audio or video recording of the work sessions. And this is where the policies get discussed, debated. They didn't want to record those. They didn't want to video those. Well, I was able to get a recording of those so they can be made public. My next step is to get those, not only the audio recording, but the video. Who is actually saying what? Because some council members will say one thing in a work session and something completely different in the public hearing, and then deny what they said. So I want full transparency. And I think if you give the people all the information, let them decide. You don't need to hide anything. Unless it's a personal nature, we're discussing public initiatives. Let's record and make available everything. And if you have the audio and video, you now have translation systems that can translate the audio, and you can see the video, who's saying what. And that's what we should be providing. And we shouldn't make English the only channel by which we deliver information to our residents. Fairfax County has, I think, over 125 languages spoken in the homes. English cannot be our only language that we communicate with. And it doesn't cost anything to put these services on translating our information. So I'd like to see many languages being supported in future councils.
Gotcha. Thank you for your views on the current mayor and the current system, current council. So what are the new, I heard of new initiatives you guys have taken about the bicycle master plan. So can you talk a little bit more about it? I mean, I know you mentioned in the beginning that, your town doesn't get to do many decisions except the budget and the land zoning. So we will talk about it a little later. But yeah, can you talk about the bicycle master plan? What are the things
Sure.
you guys have planned?
Sure. I'm the chairman of the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee. And that is, for the people that don't know, it's a group of Herndon residents that are in support of, or just to give feedback on the complete master plan. The idea is that through bike paths, walkways, every community in town is connected to other communities, to the metro, to the bike path, or to the municipal center. So if you live in the town of Herndon, you can walk, bike, wheelchair, scoot to any other place in town. And in order to do this goes back to funding. You just can't say, I support the plan. You have to put dollars behind it. So I described earlier our sidewalks many of our sidewalks appear to be from the 80s. The 1880s, right? They're very small. They're very narrow. And if you have two people walking towards, you can't have someone in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller. And I mentioned that telephone pole.
Yeah.
There are telephone poles in the middle of sidewalks. And you think about this. If you're in a wheelchair, you can't get around that. So to say you support the ADA, the American Disability Act, and not fund it, that's just hyperbole. You have to put dollars. To remove one of those telephone poles, it's about $100,000. And we haven't done that. We haven't done that in the last 20 years. We keep talking about a walkable community, but there's not the will of the majority of council prior to this council to actually do that or to fund it long term. Those projects take time. So we can't have this short-sighted view of, I don't worry about 10 years out, I don't have the money now. And what we end up having is a budget fight over $50,000 on a $50 million budget. And that's just the kind of, I want to help change that mentality where we start planning for budgets 5, 10, 20 years out. Not just planning. I don't mean just plan to talk, but to put monies behind these initiatives and not allow future councils to take that money and redeploy it somewhere else. You can't have growth, especially these days, long-term growth without these long-term initiatives being spent. And it all can't just be grants. We can't just wait on the federal government. We just can't wait on partnerships. We, the town, we control zoning, we control land use, we control the budget. We have to put those things in place. And I think what you'll see in this next round after this election, I think more and more people want that type of change, want that type of planning. So I think as November comes and the election comes, you'll see a new group of people that I think don't want to just worry about a budget for this year. I think people have seen the effects of not investing, not creating new sources of revenue, not recruiting businesses, not branding the town so people come here. We sit next to the airport, in between two airports, off of a metro station or two metro stations. Yet there's no concrete messaging to market and bring people into the town. And that's a failure on the previous councils. When I say to you, what would bring you to Herndon? Right? What would bring you to Herndon? I asked 10 other people. There's 10 or 20 different answers. We don't have a brand. And that's the type of rebranding transformation that I'm talking about. Herndon, we should be known for something. And that we should market and put on airport signs or just brand the town because we have such a valuable, well-kept secret here. And those are the types of things long-term that we need to commit to with monies today to bring those newer dollars, bring residents, bring companies, offices into the town. If in fact offices go back to the way they were. My fear is a lot of these offices, once their leases are up, they're not going to renew the leases. Most entities, companies are probably going to go virtual for a while before they have that expense.
Gotcha. That's good. So yes, I see those points. So what are the initiatives the city council is taking to attract more businesses into the Herndon? With the given situation, not many businesses are going to come back. So any plans or any thoughts in those lines?
Yeah, this is a failure. And I will own not driving this more this past term. We had an initiative, and I think we branded it Herndon. It's on. It's on. Right? That was our brand. And to me, as a Latino, that was combative. It was combative, like, oh, it's on. We're going to fight now. That I mean, I don't think they put that through enough sort of views, or that was not the branding we needed. I think for Herndon, there needs to be a new brand. It could be, based upon our diversity of restaurants. It could be the diversity of our community, the diversity of our languages, our religious beliefs. Herndon has such diversity that we can bring from. I would ask the people what they think that brand should be. Listen to what we've discovered in some of these roundtables. For the first time, and I give all credit to Councilwoman Signe Friedrichs, she pushed roundtable discussions. It met with such resistance prior to. Here's the idea. We sit down at a table and we talk to the residents, unfiltered, any topic they want to come by. And that was so successful. I think we need to do that in terms of rebranding. We definitely need to rebrand, but I would love to hear from the community. I think that's something that we need to certainly push. I think we're better when we leverage more creativity from more minds. I don't have all the answers. My ego isn't such that I think I know everything. I don't. So I think the blessings are in the diversity in our residents. Somewhere out there's a great idea on how we brand Herndon, how we leverage our unique and creative arts. We have a very big arts community. We seem to be the destination for, because of the bike path, beer. We very big in bicycling, cyclists. People like to eat burgers. So there are all these things that converge in town. The branding is in there somewhere. I just don't know what it is. But I think an initiative to rebrand the town is how we then get and market to get more business and people to come here.
Gotcha. Very nice. I mean, from the as a traveler point of view, I mean, whenever I travel to that area, I was able to get going. It was a coincidence. I was able to get a good hotel, reasonable price. I mean, in Herndon area, and I also like that strip mall where you have a clock tower and all the restaurants and the shops, and behind that, when you have an apartment complex also behind that. I like that area too. I don't know what you call. I forgot the name of that particular strip mall. But it's a beautiful place.
So just remember, I got it just for clarity. So when you talk about Herndon, north of the toll road is Herndon in essence. If you go south of the toll road, that's Fairfax County. Okay, so north of the toll road, Eldon Street, going down towards the Fairfax County Parkway, that whole Herndon Incorporated is the town. So next time you call me, I'll let you know where to stay in the town of Herndon.
Gotcha. Okay, certainly I will. We'll let you know on that one. We'll coordinate, and thank you very much.
Please do.
So, I mean, yeah, and another elections point of view, so usually, I mean, in any city council elections or mayoral elections, or even nowadays I've been talking to another congressman, mostly the funding is done by the construction companies. Well, I mean, are kind of a campaign funding, donations, and those kind of things. They come to the construction company. But in your case, it looks like your budget with the land zoning, with less, you're not able to approve the construction. I'm sure. I mean, you guys will not be getting any funding from the construction companies. How are you guys managing your campaign? Is it okay to ask you this question?
No, absolutely. Look, I will tell you, previous council members have taken money from developers. Last election, I financed my old campaign for the longest time. My financial statements are available. And by the way, I was accused of running an illegal campaign. So it was quite humorous. I have a campaign manager, and I think it was way into the election campaign that I took my first donation. But if you look at my statements, almost all of my campaign funds were I donated to my campaign. Now, having said that, I have made a commitment not to take any money from any developer. I just think that's very bad practice. Even if you can claim or maintain some bias or some dispassionate, objective position, you're going to have a bias just because someone gave you a big check. I just think it's wrong. I wouldn't do it, and I would encourage all future council members to not take any developer money. It's just you're making decisions on land use and zoning, and I think it's bad form. I think if you need the money that bad, you haven't done enough campaigning or finance events to raise campaign funds, then you probably shouldn't run for office. That's my thinking.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much for your views on all the topics. Do you have any message for the audience and the listeners or the voters in your city?
I think the message to the folks in Herndon, the town of Herndon is a very unique area. It's located next to the only airport with any future expansion capacity left on the East Coast. We'll sit off 2 metro stations. We're off of the Beltway, which is around the DC capital. It's such a unique place. It's such a diverse place. It's such a great place to start, but we have a lot of work to do. And I would ask your listeners, your viewers, to think about contributing to the town somehow. I know it's hard. People have jobs. They have lives. It's busy. But somewhere out there in your community, there's someone in the town of Herndon that can contribute and can bring a unique perspective, a unique worldview that will help the town, that will help us make the right decisions for more people. And I think that's what true democracy is when you have everyone contribute, you come up with the best ideas, and we move forward. It can't just be one people being represented in leadership or on these boards and commissions. So my ask is get involved, make sure you vote, make sure your family's registered to vote, and vote for candidates that represent your views the best. It's not going to be 100%. And if you certainly want to learn more about me, reach out to me as well. Again, I believe our strength in this country, in our community, comes from our diversity. And I think diversity enriches us always who we are. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate having spoken to you.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming on to the show, Mr. Cesar del Aguila. And good luck with your...
My pleasure.
Have a nice day.
No, thank you. God bless you. Thank you. You good?
Yeah, we are done. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.
Srinivas. Pleasure talking to you.
Nice.
Great day. When can you send me a link when this will be available on your site?
Certainly, we will do that once. I will send it to you maybe in a few hours.
Thank you.
By tomorrow morning. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good luck with your run. We'll catch up again. Thank you.
Okay.